Hi guys.
Welcome to the Rundown. My name is Nzyuko.
And I am Mikhala Barasa.
So at the Rundown, we talk about legal and regulatory issues that you may be facing when you're doing business or as an individual. We also talk about economic issues that we're facing as a country and as the African continent as a whole. And we also try to have fun here.
And give opinions on current issues.
Exactly.
And we hope you enjoy this episode. On today's episode, we are going to talk to you a little bit about regulators in Kenya, who a regulator is, what a regulator does, and the intricacies of our Kenyan regulatory systems and regulatory bodies, especially in financial services. So welcome very much. Can we start from who a regulator is? Maybe you can take that.
Okay. So the textbook definition of a regulator is a person or an entity that has been given the mandate to supervise an industry or a business activity. Okay. Yeah. So that's just the basic definition of a regulator. So you find, like in the context of Kenya, we have various industries that are regulated. So the first example would be financial services.
Yes.
So like financial services, the banking sector is regulated by
Central Bank of Kenya. Yeah.
We have investments, so securities, fund management, that's regulated by the Capital Markets Authority.
Yeah.
Then we have insurance, which is regulated by the Insurance Regulatory Authority. Then we have pension and pension schemes. It's regulated by the Retirement Benefits Authority. Yeah. Oh, and SACCOs.
SASRA, yes.
Yeah, SACCOs are regulated by SASRA. Yeah, I think those are the key regulators around the financial services sector. So the other industry that's regulated is manufacturing. So, for example, when you go to the supermarket and you buy probably liter of oil, you see on the packaging there's a KEBS
stamp. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the Kenya Bureau of
Standards. Yes.
That regulates manufacturing. So anything that we are supposed to consume, they consume. Yeah.
Yes,
they regulate basically products. Yes.
Even services. When you look at CAK, Communication Authorities of Kenya, the new Office of the Data Protection Commission, which kind of regulates how data is managed. And I think when we are looking at the definition of who a regulator is, I'd like to bring in the fact that most of these regulators are brought about by statutes. So there's a law that says there shall be a regulator called ABCDE. So I think that, and there's a difference between hardline regulators that actually mandate you to do some things and policy-based regulators. So like the one we were just talking about before we started this episode, the Micro and Small Enterprises Authority, it's a pretty new regulator. So most of their regulation is around creating of policies and a conducive environment for public and private sector to collaborate. Yes.
And actually that brings us to a very good point. What would you say are the importance or the key mandates of regulators? Like, why do we have regulatory bodies?
Okay, so my first and foremost one would be standardization. And that's just looking at the mandate of KEBS. Standardization of what we consume, and then maybe standardization of the services that we get. There's also the standardization of what you as a human or as a person or as an industry or even as a company takes out of the company and brings in. Look at maybe the Office of the Data Protection Commission that standardizes how much information you can take out of a company, you can bring in. And also, I think the other good thing that regulators do is formulation of policies. I know there are, like I said, the headline regulators that really have to come up with the rules and the regulations and actually even penalties for non-compliance for those rules and regulations. But the part of it where they come up with policies kind of steer how an industry is supposed to go, which then means that in that industry, the service delivery levels become higher.
Yeah, I think those are very good points. So basically, what we're saying is the regulator, the first thing is standardization of services
Yes.
across a certain industry. Yeah, and I think one of the other things that we don't normally think about the role of a regulator, it's also to stimulate innovation
Oh, yes.
and to grow that particular industry.
Yes.
Yeah, so you'll find, for example, like when you look at CBK,
Mhm.
CBK will have industry reports or research that they do and give to their stakeholders, the banks, on how they can improve their services.
Even IRA.
Yes,
Even
and
IRA
what
does
they can do to grow that sector, because that's part of their mandate. So the government expects them to grow that sector because those sectors contribute a certain percentage to the overall GDP of the country.
I think when you also look at it from what the Insurance Regulatory Authority has been doing, if you're an ardent watcher of the news, they do a very good job of sensitizing the citizens of what the stakeholders and the players in your industry do. So maybe they'll talk about, when you get motor insurance, this is what you need, this is what happens. And when you go into their website or you look at them on LinkedIn, sometimes you'll see their financial reports are out. They list probably if let's say it's agencies, insurance agencies, they list and say these are the legitimate insurance agencies that have come into play in 2023. They have taken out licenses, they are compliant, and it actually makes the public know more about just that particular industry.
And that brings us to the other point of consumer protection. So that's also something that the regulators are mandated with, consumer protection. So for example, you have the Competitions
Authority of Kenya.
They are mandated with consumer protection, competition and consumer protection.
Consumer protection, yes.
So they make sure that you're not being
exploited,
yes, by the various companies or industries, yes. So basically, you need to know that you can lodge complaints to regulators if you feel that the company that you're receiving a product or a service from has infringed on your rights,
yes.
Or there has been misrepresentation of that product or service.
Or you've been overcharged for it, even by like a store. If you go to a store and feel like I've been overcharged for this product, the retail price is this, and I actually want to lodge a complaint, CAK does that for you. Yes.
Oh yeah, and then which reminds me, remember that time when supermarkets would give us sweets
instead of money? Yes.
Like, anyway, let me be nice in this episode. So yes, so there are people who lodged that complaint to the competition
CAK, yes.
But CAK said that that's not their mandate because that was an issue of currency. So it's also important to know,
to understand
the different mandates for the various regulators. So they sent the people who complained to CBK. So it's CBK that is supposed to tell us, is
sweets currency?
Yeah, it's sweets currency, And okay, well,
I know
sweets is not currency. There's a time we were with one of my friends. We went into a supermarket and bought some things, and when we were given sweets, and then we remembered, we forgot something. So when we came back in, we asked them, now, can we pay with
these sweets? Exactly. Will you take back the sweets and give us value, equal value in product?
Exactly. And they can't accept
Of course they cannot.
So there's no way they can give you.
Goods once sold are not returnable.
I know. And that wasn't a good. They gave you sweets instead of
money, yes.
And so such situations you're supposed to report now to the Central Bank of Kenya. So basically what we're saying is you need to understand what are the different mandates
of different regulators,
so that in the event that you have a complaint or you have some feedback that you need to give about an industry as a whole, you go straight to that specific regulator. Yeah, and I think a lot of the services, especially from those regulators have improved over time, because they are now like semi-autonomous bodies
from the government.
Yeah.
Yes.
So their services have improved. So I think the other thing that I would say is also key to think about regulators is licensing. So they're the ones that license the various companies that operate in that industry.
How did we miss that?
Yeah.
It's actually like a very
That's
it's the core mandate of
Exactly.
most regulators. Yes.
So, for example, if you are going to get a service from an insurance company, you need to make sure that they have a valid license
From the IRA.
Yeah. Even for insurance agencies, okay, when you go to the IRA website, you can check the
licensed here, the agencies that are licensed. And they have to do something to keep their licenses up to date, because that list is released annually. And I think they even put it in the paper.
Yes, they reapply every year.
Yeah.
So what like IRA does is to check whether they are in good standing. You know, for example, someone may have complained of fraud. So, for example, you maybe gave your agent money to pay for your premiums, and then the guy just
disappeared with it. So is that why they introduced that no cash?
Yes.
No cash being taken by agents, yeah?
Yeah. So all payments have to go directly
to the insurer.
Company. Yeah. So if you now go and complain and say agency X took my money and I didn't get an insurance cover, then that
they're investigated
and blacklisted from their list of approved agencies.
I think the other thing that we need to appreciate about most of this regulators is like the Insurance Regulatory Authority. I know they have like a complaints division. Yes. They have like a division that is set out exclusively for complaints. So I realized during my stint in insurance that sometimes when a customer lodges a complaint with you as an insurer, they copy IRA. Yes. So if you copy the Insurance Regulatory Authority, a lot of the service providers will be falling over to resolve your issue so that IRA does not escalate it and blacklist them. Yes. I think even the Retirement Benefits Authority has a complaint section. Like most of these regulators will have a separate complaint section. I think even when you look at the Central Bank of Kenya and the licensing of digital lenders that happened the other day, even that digital licensing, there's a sort of complaints division that handles complaints exclusively for that digital lending. I don't know if it's general, but I know anybody that has issues with that digital lending, actually, that regulation that brought in the digital lending said you can lodge your complaint with the Central Bank of Kenya so that they look at it and they say, this person is getting harassed by digital lender XYZ. Let's investigate. Is it a prosecutable case? Is it not? What happened? I think that is another thing that most of us don't understand regulators can do for us. Because even before you come to me as a lawyer who really needs your money, before you come to me as a lawyer and say, by the way, this bank XYZ is doing ABCD with my money and I'm not happy about it, if your first stop is CBK, you might be able to get a faster resolve than if you come through me first. Because either way, I might just be forced to go back and write to CBK. Yeah.
Actually, that's true, because you'll find a lot of complaints that go to regulators are written by the lawyers. So the lawyers will first check how can they work through the regulatory system to get a complaint out. So for example, like right now, with the introduction of the Office of the Data Protection Commission, because a lot of people don't know how to navigate those complaints to the ODPC, they'll complain to their lawyer that my data was used inappropriately, you know, or I've been getting maybe marketing information that I did not subscribe to.
Random marketing information. And that is happening a lot. That office is handling a lot of those disputes.
Exactly. So people write, the lawyers first will write to the ODPC, who then writes to the company.
Yes.
Get that. Yeah. So I think I'm not taking business away from you guys.
No, it's fine. We understand, and it's something that the public actually needs to know, because again, even though we are talking about regulators, maybe I might bring in a different perspective. It's the same issue with the small claims court. When the small claims court was coming into operation, the thought around it was Kenyans and citizens don't really need to go through a lawyer to be able to get a resolve. You know, you can literally just go and say, give me forms, or go in the internet, get forms, fill them out, like file them, and follow it through with your case. And most of those small claims, magistrate will not even ask you where your lawyer is. Like the case will probably, yes, the case will probably go to completion. It's very normal in that court for cases to go on without lawyers. But of course, there are lawyers now that are exclusively small claims court lawyers, and it's a good thing. But it's in the same breath that I would say, before you even get to a lawyer's office, exhaust everything. Go check. If CBK can't help you, then go through the lawyer. The lawyer might now know what to do to assist you in that sense.
I think we need to do an episode where you train us a bit about the
Small claims court.
Yeah, because I think that's an interesting avenue. We need to know what kind of issues we can raise in the small claims court. Yeah, and I'm sure even the legal fees for the lawyers.
It's
small claims court,
it's not much.
yes,
It's very capped. Yes.
and that's a good thing. I think that's important. So the other area that you mentioned about one of the roles of the
Regulator.
regulators is also to regulate pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you'll find like CBK will put a base and a cap
yeah.
on interest rates that banks
Oh,
can
yes.
charge.
Mm.
Yes. And that's part of consumer protection, so that you're not exploited in terms of pricing. You know, you'll find probably some products will will have a similar range. Yes. So that also, even it also protects the new entrants into that market from undercutting.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, if we've gotten probably into cooking oil manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
So Ndanu, I have a small company, and Mikhala has a big company, and then she sees that people have started buying Ndanu's products. Yes, and then now Mikhala, because she has the financial muscle, she
Undercuts, heavily undercuts.
undercuts. So, and then that would put Ndanu out of
Business, yes.
Yeah. So that's also part of what a regulator does to make sure that they protect new entrants into that market, into that industry, so that we don't have a lot of companies closing down within the first few years of their operations.
I think the other thing that we might have not mentioned is most of the regulators are also mandating with prosecuting crimes that are associated with violating the rules and mandates that they've been given. Like maybe when you talk about the Office of the Data Protection Commission, like they hear complaints about my data was taken. Yeah, this was done, and they give a resolve. When you look at KEBS, they have a tribunal. There's a KEBS tribunal that if they give you licensing, or they tell you you can put, so the KEBS standardization mark, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it usually comes with a number at the bottom. So that's like your identification number, like this product was certified by, and then this number given. So sometimes when they come to your shelves and they find either you do not have the KEBS stamp or your stamp does not have that number, of course, it's a permit violation. And one, it's a criminal offense. Secondly, it's also something that you can go back to the tribunal and probably like prosecute around it. Yes. So a lot of this regulatory bodies have their own tribunals that are specialized to hear and determine issues exclusively related to what they do. So it won't go to other criminal offenses, such as stealing, and no, but it will be exclusive to just what that agency does.
Yeah. And I think one thing you mentioned is that these regulatory bodies are given their mandate through an act of parliament.
Mm-hmm.
So they are created following an act of parliament, and then after that they create now regulations and guidelines that now are used now to give like the operating standard for that industry.
Yes.
And that's what Mikhala was talking about. If you violate any of the regulations or guidelines that have been prescribed by these regulatory bodies or these authorities, then they have the power to levy a fine,
yes, penalty or a sanction, or even prosecute you.
Take away your license.
Yes, take away your license.
So it's important if you're doing business in a certain industry to understand what are the regulations that are applicable to my industry and ensure that you're compliant with them. Yeah, because if you're not compliant,
Of course you have.
Yes.
And then the challenge with most of this government regulatory bodies and agencies is, and I'm sorry to bring agencies into this conversation, is once they find one violation, it might be a small permit violation. It might be maybe, can be the KEBS mark, it can be maybe your license expired 2 weeks ago, you've not renewed it and you're continuing business. They do this thing where they say, you know what, this is a criminal offense. It involves both us as the regulatory authority and the DCI. Then they bring in the DCI. By the time they're bringing in the DCI, they have called everyone, KRA, like then they start calling it a multi-agency crime. So then you have to, first of all, deal with this thing, with your licensing requirement, finish it. Then now you'll have to deal with KRA. You might have to deal with Anti-Counterfeit Authority. You might have to deal with 17 other authorities before now you finish with the DCI in court. So you see, the thing about not understanding what your regulator does or who your regulator is might land you into more problems than just that regulator. Yeah.
Interesting. So on that note, I think many times in companies, people wonder, okay, so why do we have this compliance person? Why do we
Oh,
have this
yes.
legal person?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you can tell us what function do these people play in terms of protecting the business from what you're talking about?
Okay. So when you look at it from a legal and compliance perspective, most of the times this is the office that is charged with being a liaison between the company and the regulator. So first of all, the legal office and the compliance office will have to go through the Act of Parliament that your industry is within. If it's the banking sector, the Banking Act, the CBK Act, look at the rules, look at the procedures, look at the parameters within which CBK allows you to work within, and tell the business, by the way, in our business, this is the capped lending rate, this is the least we can go, this is the highest, lowest. If you don't confine yourself within this, these are the penalties, and these are the advantages. And give the business the opportunity. Most of it is you have to comply. But then there are other instances where you're looking at the regulator and what the regulator has given, and you're looking at your business, and the business is forced to make a business decision and say, well, the regulator is saying this, but we are choosing to be smart and take it this way. And then it comes back to you as a legal person to say, if we get into this amount of trouble, then how am I helping you navigate this kind of trouble? But more often than not, the legal and compliance department is just to ensure that, one, you know who the regulator is. Two, you understand the mandate of each regulator, and this is for each department. This even includes, like, if I have to do training with you to understand KEBS, I will do that training. If I have to do training with, I don't know, our department that is selling lamps, to make them understand Consumer Federation, to make them understand KEBS, I will do that. Like, if maybe we are giving loans, I have to do training with the loans officers to just make sure these are the parameters within which your collection is. And I said, this is what the regulator says you can do. Now, if my business understands that and the people understand that, then it puts the risk at which the business is and the people are at prosecution, the risk of prosecution, the risk of reputational damage, it reduces that risk. And I think that is what legal and compliance departments do in relation to handling regulators.
That makes sense. So now you know, we protect the company, protect the employees, most especially the CEO.
The CEO,
of the
yes.
company.
Because you don't have to be hiding under the table because I raised, yeah. Like, that's not. Yeah.
Yeah, because regulators can come at you very heavy and also make an example of
you, yes,
to the rest of the industry. Yeah, when they want to make sure that there's some compliance across the industry, they just hit one company,
and then word goes round.
Exactly.
And they say, this is what happened to Ndanu's company. Now you become an example, and a bad example, not even a good example.
And also, I think one of the things that a lot of the regulators, like the CEO is in regulatory bodies, are scared of is being summoned to Parliament
to explain, yes,
why a certain company either violated consumer rights or why a certain industry is not performing
well
how it's supposed to be performing. Yeah.
And I think when you think about that summoning, sorry to cut you short, summoning of CEOs into parliament to go and answer questions. Sometimes you look at the financial services sector and you look at the magnitude of maybe losses that companies have made, maybe in a certain financial year, and you actually understand how a CEO of a regulator could be summoned to go and answer those questions. And please note at the back of this is, I do not know what happens in that company as the CEO of a regulator.
I know.
They are just doing their own things. I don't understand. Then I go try to explain to parliament and to tell them, maybe I summon you to take me to that meeting and try and explain to parliament. But when I come back, what is stopping me and my regulatory friends wenye tuko nao huku from raining it down on you and saying this company, by the way, you'll either close down or you'll behave.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's somebody, and of course we are human. There's no one who wants to be called by their boss.
I know.
And be given and
Into the principal's office. I hope CEO.
I am sorry that company X
Didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, my people on the ground have been. We have compliance officers on the ground. Yeah, but it's quite difficult. I think also something that's interesting to talk about the regulators is they also do workshops for capacity building.
Yes.
Yes, for the industry players. So part of the research that they do and the data they collect from consumers and from the industry players, now they have workshops where they bring together their industry players to educate them and tell them, so this is the general feeling across the industry from your clients. They are saying either your prices are too high or how you resolve your complaints is too slow. So they give general feedback and do capacity building for the leaders in those industries. Yeah, and I think maybe something that you may need to explain to us is, what is the difference between a regulator and association for an industry? So let's say, for example, in the banking sector, we have CBK and we have
Kenya Bankers Association.
Yes.
Okay. So I'd start with the obvious. CBK, if CBK says, move this cap from here to here, you have to do it.
Yes.
If Kenya Banker says, move this cap from here to here, the cap has moved, but not to where it is.
Okay.
So CBK regulates the industry. Like yendo msema kweli. If CBK says, you have to do. And Kenya Bankers Association is more, I am your friend. Let's come together. Let's see what we can do as friends to elevate our business. So associations is like a friendly, is like a friendly intermingling of stakeholders in the industry. It's like the insurance one is called what? AKI, yes, Association of Kenya Insurers. Yes, the service delivery will improve. Yes, you will have conversations, but in these associations, you come to know more about each other, know how businesses, each of you conducts their business, just know how you can relate and probably bring better quality work. And most of what is given by, actually this is the definition I was looking for, most of the outcomes that are looked for by Kenya Bankers Association would be through recommendations. And a recommendation is not a decision. A recommendation you can either choose to do or not to do. When CBK says you do something, they are not asking. They are just saying,
comply.
See to shastema, where comply will take away your license.
Yeah.
So the mandates and powers and privileges that a regulator holds are not the same as an association. An association's things might be suggestive. A regulator's things are, I'm not suggesting, I'm not asking. You have to follow through.
Yeah, and I think for an association, you can choose to be a member of the association or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can choose to be part of it. There are advantages to being a member of that association as a company, because you get to lobby together as an industry. So let's say, for example, for Kenya Bankers, in the event that CBK are coming up with a regulation that's punitive, they can lobby together.
Yes.
And tell CBK, hey, by the way,
chezeni chini. Yeah.
We're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think that is one of the things that differentiates a regulator from an
association. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so maybe I think one thing we may want to know is which industry can you think of that is regulated that most people don't know that it's regulated?
My bet would be the SMEs, the Micro and Small Enterprises Authority. Like, I know for a fact,
Yes.
a lot of people don't know about that authority, and I know they even have a tribunal. Like, if you have issues,
Yeah.
to take to that tribunal. I even, you know how I found this out? I saw a lady in the gym with a T-shirt, SMEA Authority. I was like,
What's that?
what is this? So I called her, I was like, hey, nini. Then she now explained to me, she was like, yeah, I work for this authority, this is what they do. Most of what we do is just policy driven because of the, the informal, we were talking about the informality of some small businesses in Kenya. We are trying to find a way to just include public and private sector. Yeah. So that one for me would be it.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know about Micro and Small Enterprises Authority.
Yeah. So I think you can go and search, get to know what industries are regulated. If you're in business, make sure you understand what whether your industry is regulated, what sort of permits and licenses you need to have to carry out that business. Yes, and make sure that you're compliant. In the event that you're not sure on what to do, can always reach out to us.
You can always reach kwanza hata weka tu hapa comment. Tuweke hapa comment.
Yeah.
We'll be able to help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was informative.
Yeah.
We are going to have subsequent episodes where we delve deeper on specific regulators and what they do, and also maybe bring in some guests who can be able to explain to us further what various regulators do and how you can get into those industries, or how you can navigate complaints to those specific regulators.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think this has also been a fun episode.
It is.
Yes.
We might like doing this actually.
Yeah.
It was so lovely to hang out with you. Please remember to like this video, share with a friend, subscribe. Subscription is free. Like, just subscribe to our, subscribe. Like, tafadhali, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. My Instagram handle is Mikhala Barasa. You can find me on Twitter on Mikhala Barasa. My favorite platform is LinkedIn. You can find me there on Mikhala Barasa. Anywhere, any social media platform, my name is Mikhala Barasa. And
my handle is Ndanu Nzyuko on Instagram and on LinkedIn. I think on Twitter, I shall try. I think it is Ndanu Nzyuko. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Sorry.